Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. Melinda and I had been friends for the longest. Honestly, probably as far as I can drag my memory. I can recall one thing or the other about our friendship. Our friendship started off through our parents. We lived and still do live a couple of minutes away from each other, and that is how our parents met as well. They became immediate friends and started hanging out with each other. That is how we were introduced to each other, as literal babies, and our friendship continued blooming ever since. It was like even as we grew older, our friendship stayed the same. It never felt like we changed, even during high school, the peak time of our life. Even while having different friend groups, we stayed closer than ever, and that is how I figured out that this was a forever thing, not just a forced friendship that happened because our parents were friends with each other. Well, soon after we got into college, I was kind of proven wrong. It wasn't in the first year itself, though, because that was kind of wasted away navigating about college life. Melinda and I weren't in the same college, but in different ones, which came under the same university. So we had pretty similar schedules and decided to become roommates. Well, second year came along and Grayson walked into Melinda's life. Now, I would be straight up lying if I said Grayson was unattractive. He was a very attractive guy, but one thing about him was that he had the capability to turn off girls just by opening his mouth. This is what happened, at least to me, when we first met at the bar where I was with Melinda and Grayson was with his friend Levi. He had initially approached me, offering me drinks. I accepted and instantly felt Melinda becoming jealous, but honestly, that night it didn't click to me that she wanted him. Well, we begin to talk over drinks, and I soon figure out that this guy is weird AF with his views. Quite conservative and honestly demeaning towards women. So I just kind of step back and start talking to Levi more as I see Melinda have the time of her life with this dude. Needless to say, they hooked up that night and then again and again and again with no sign of a relationship coming, while Melinda raved about how much in love she was with this dude, while I heard multiple of my girlfriends telling me how they had hooked up with this dude, all the while he flirted with me whenever he came over to our flat. Well, things only got worse from there because Melinda falls pregnant, and that is where their relationship truly begins. Remember when I said that Grayson was conservative? Yeah, exactly. His parents are 10 times conservative, and he knew he'd be screwed. So he got into a relationship with Melinda, and they were able to put off their wedding at least until they graduated, which they never did, BTW. Because ever since Melinda gave birth to her baby, she had become too caught up with taking care of it. Our communication kind of dwindled ever since then. I guess that's when she started resenting me, and honestly, by the time 3 years had passed, I wasn't even aware that we had gotten this distant. I had just been chalking everything up to us being busy with our lives. It wasn't until I received the news of Melinda's wedding, not through Melinda, but a distant friend of mine. Yes, my best friend of years had not only invited me to her wedding, but also hadn't told me about it, let alone the fact that she was engaged. It was heartbreaking because even my parents were invited, who were just as shocked to find out about the fact that I wasn't invited, and the news spread from one mouth to another, and eventually Melinda's parents found out and they berated her. This was when the first argument between us broke down. She screamed and yelled at me, telling me how wrong I was for making her look like a bad person and ruining her wedding by stealing her husband and other insensible BS. The only thing I realized, and that came out of the conversation, was the realization that she had become as immature as her toddler, and I had no interest in talking to her. So I just took a step back, encouraged by my parents and friends who were protesting to go to the wedding to attend and support Melinda. Well, apparently, a lot of my friends described the wedding as the silence before the storm. How it was noticeable that Grayson was least interested in Melinda, and how jealous she was throughout the marriage. Hearing all this, everything started to make sense, and it kind of clicked to me exactly why she was excluded from her wedding, and it was confirmed to me when she called me the very next day. I had honestly thought she had called me on accident and things just got more confusing. She started talking to me as if nothing had happened. Well, after all that she had done, I knew I wasn't up to take her BS and asked her to cut to the chase. So she very hesitantly asked me that she wanted a gift from me for her wedding. Now, I was immediately pissed off, but thought this story was going to go in a completely different direction. I thought there was going to be some are entitled people thing, but boy, I had to grab a seat after hearing her request. This girl had the audacity to ask me to sleep with her husband once so that she could have him back. I was speechless. I immediately started berating at her, calling her all sorts of names, and just hung up the call because at that point I was hyperventilating. Well, Melinda did not care and started blowing up my phone with texts begging me to consider. If that wasn't disgusting enough, Grayson also started blowing up my phone with texts, practically professing his love for me. I was shocked and honestly wanted to do something about it immediately. So I made a Facebook post with all the screenshots and tagged Melinda, her employer, Grayson, and his business account. Well, it didn't take too long and the word spread. Not only the couple had seen the post, but their parents too had seen it. The comments flooded with comments from people berating the two, and needless to say, it wasn't a pretty sight. Well, after the post, I hadn't thought much about it. It was like I had received a satisfaction that was enough to reduce the anger in me for the time being, and so I was quite calm, all until my parents started blowing up my phone with calls, both of them telling me how wrong I was for making this scene public. According to them, although they agree with what Grayson and Melinda had done was wrong, I was wrong for making things public. I was dumbfounded because my parents said that Melinda's parents had the same view. So this is where I'm conflicted. After feeling like what I did was right, my parents, who are generally chill, have decided to correct me. What should my next step be? AITA for exposing my best friend and her husband on Facebook after she requested me to have sex with him as a wedding present? After reading all of your replies, I think you guys are right. I don't think I should feel guilty for something I clearly don't have a part in. At the end, whatever happened was their fault because it was them who had the guts to ask such a thing. Well, I went over to my parents' place to talk to them about the same, and oh boy, did they blow up at me. They started yelling, screaming, and berating me, telling me how they had raised me better than to be a toxic B word. I was floored at their reaction because it was completely unexpected and unnecessary. I wasn't even allowed to speak, just hear them scream at me and accuse me of things I never did. I knew I had enough. I just couldn't understand the reason why my parents were so religiously supporting her, as if she was their daughter instead of me. So I decided to leave, thanking them for being so supportive, sarcastically, obviously. Well, on my way back, I received a call from Ashley, a mutual friend between Melinda and I. She called up to tell me that she wanted to meet to catch up about everything that had been going on. Ashley was the one who had told me about Melinda's wedding, so she knew the full length of the relationship. So I just know I have to meet her. When I do, which is tomorrow, I will update you all. Hi all. I met up with Ashley today, and boy, my parents' reaction did make sense. Basically, it goes without a word that Ashley and I have been friends for so long, so to my parents, we both were like their children. So when they found out that Ashley and Grayson both were facing severe repercussions regarding their jobs when their employers saw the post, it was heartbreaking for them, especially due to the fact that they have a child together, which I can understand since my parents have come from a similar background, meaning them not having supportive family and struggling with employment and having kids. So I guess their situation hit close to home for them, which I completely understood. But the fact that they thought it was okay for them to do it in my expense is what broke my heart. Well, regardless, I thanked her and decided to leave. A couple of days have passed now, and after dead silence, I received a call from Melinda's parents. I thought this was them calling me to berate me again, but surprisingly, this time, they have told me that they just want to sit down and talk. I think I'm ready for it because I want to get over this already. We'll update you all in some time. My eyes are filled with tears as I type this. I went over to Melinda's parents' place yesterday and was shocked to see there wasn't just Melinda present there, but Grayson, his parents, and my parents present there. I immediately figured what all this was about, but decided to just face it, thinking that these people had at least an inch of empathy in them, but of course I was wrong. It was like an intervention. All these people had ganged up on me and immediately began berating me for everything I did. Apparently, I was the villain for everything that ever happened, and that I needed to pay back and repent by helping them find an apartment after they had gone over all their savings for the wedding. Hell, I immediately said no and knew I just needed to leave. This is where things became worse because Grayson tried to physically restrain me from leaving. I knew I had enough and threatened to call the cops on them. I guess that was enough to scare them, and they just left me. So once I got home, I immediately reported everything that happened to the cops. I also blocked all and every contact with not just Melinda, but with my parents as well. I feel like the real reason why my parents did it was due to the fact that I was infertile. So Melinda's child became like the grandchild they knew they wouldn't have from me, and so that is what led to them picking a side in such a manner. Well, even though it was heartbreaking, I know I have to move forward, and for the same, I'm in the process of finding a therapist and moving houses. Thank you all for your amazing support and advice. NTA, I don't even think you need to ask. You'd never be the a-hole in this situation. Ever since Grayson kept flirting with you while having a girlfriend and your best friend not stopping him, they lost my respect. Cut these people out. NTA, this is literally harassment and needs to be reported to the cops before anything too bad happens. Please take care, OP. I, 21 female, had gotten a guitar for my birthday 8 years ago from my grandmother, which came with a small amp and some learning discs. My grandmother and I were extremely close. She practically raised me, but unfortunately she ended up passing away from leukemia when I was 14. I received nothing except a plant and 9 of her t-shirts after the funeral. Well, 2 years ago, my stepsister, 24, came into town from 2 states away to help my family move. During this time, I had moved most of my things to my boyfriend's parents' house. While I was at work, she had asked my mother if she could take the guitar back to her home state to learn how to play. My mother agreed since I played it and it was sitting there collecting dust, but told her to ask me since it was mine. Obviously, I said no. But my mother insisted I let her learn since she has nothing better to do. This sister has torn up so many items of mine in the past. I was told to get over it, and my mother gave her permission and she took the guitar anyway. I went to collect the rest of my things from my mother's old house, and the guitar, discs, and amp were kept from me. My mother told me to let it go because she's my sister and promised nothing bad will happen to it. I told her I wanted it back after 3 months since she would be coming back through our town to give my mom her dog back. She agreed and we all went our separate ways. Well, that day never came. She never came back into town and I've been asking for the past 3 years for my guitar back. I messaged her several times offering to drive to her state to get it and my mother's dog, which she was refusing to give back. I was told that it was never a good time for me to come out because she assured me I would get my guitar back. I even offered to pay her for the time it took and pay for all the shipping costs to get it shipped to me. She ignored my messages and eventually just blocked me on all forms of contact. I tried going through my mother to get it back, but she told me to let it go and plan on never seeing it again. She finally unblocked me a week ago. I was pulled into a FaceTime group with her and my other sister today, and I asked if she still had it and if so, if I could get it back. She smirked at me and said, Oh, that! It got pawned. I could feel my heart fall out of my chest when she said this. I asked her why, and she responded with dope money for her mother-in-law. I blew up on her and started yelling that I would take her or the mother-in-law to court or file a police report for theft since she pawned it. She hung up on me and said that I was going to get her kicked out of her mother-in-law's house for making the threats. I called my grandfather and got the total amount the guitar was worth and told her she either paid it or I would assume legal action. My dad is completely on my side, and so is my boyfriend. On the other hand, my mom and her husband are calling me an a-hole. So, AITA? I faked it till I made it. I told my stepsister that I filed a police report for theft of my guitar, as well as false declaration of ownership and selling stolen property to a pawn shop. Those two I was actually able to do. I told her unless she paid for the total sum of the guitar, I would proceed with charges and sue for the guitar cost, emotional damages, my lawyer costs, and all my court fees. That was sent to both her and the mother-in-law. I also sent my mother a message letting her know I'd go after her for conspiracy to theft, and she decided to blow my phone up asking about the Reddit post as well as calling me names. I muted her, and she decided to do the same from my little brother's phone and Facebook for almost 2 hours. The stepsister blew up on me and sent me an audio recording saying, I still have your stupid frickin' guitar. It's in my storage unit. I only said I pawned it because I wanted to see how you would treat me after all this time. You would literally get me arrested. So if you want it so bad, you can drive your happy ass up here to get it, because I'm over it and I'm blocking you. See how much of a sister you are now. I could never OP over a piece of plastic. I'm currently seeing what I can do legally since she's still refusing to give it back and admitting to having it. I got her phone number from my other stepsister, 21, and sent her a text. I once again offered to pay for shipping and the time it took for her to do it. I sent the text to both her and my mother telling them if I had no proof of life on my guitar and it was not in the process of being shipped by this Sunday, I would continue with the charges and lawsuit. The deputy I talked to said I needed written proof that it's mine, which I'm getting from my grandfather since he helped buy it. My grandfather wanted me to let it go and offered to give me what they got at the pawn shop. I am not taking him up on that and am going after the stepsister. After everything is said and done, I plan on going NC with my mother and the rest of the family. I have mounds of stories and so many screenshots of past abuse situations just like this. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. I was trying to keep in contact to be able to talk to my little siblings. 3 male, 9 female, 12 male. But I'm going to put myself and mental health first now. NTA, why should you care about the well-being of people who don't care about yours in the first place? Both your stepsister and your mom are TA, though. If stepsister gets kicked out, then that's on her. She is a grown adult and needs to be held responsible for her own actions. I'm sorry that your mom seems to be highly playing favorites here. NTA, take her to court. Actions have consequences. She had no right to do that, and she owes you full reimbursement or the original back. Your mom is wrong. NTA, she stole property and pawned it. That's a crime. Don't just threaten legal action. Follow through with it. And remind your mom that she's an accessory to a crime. So she should either keep her mouth shut or pay the money herself since she gave your guitar to your sister.